On to part 10 now. So this video, at least for the first part of this video, I'm concentrating on the bottom right hand corner, which is where the firelight's coming from, to highlight those faces. So at the moment I've got a Createx illustration orange in the airbrush, and I'm just slowly introducing that colour in, doing very light passes, because I don't want to oversaturate it. I don't want to lose that detail that I spent time doing in the previous video on that the bottom head. Even though it's a, there's not a lot of detail in it and it needs to be washed out, I still want to come in fairly light, because I will be making more passes later on with another colour. So it's all about less is more at the moment, just to help introduce the colour. And you see I've added a bit of a red to the mix now, just to help border some of those darker areas, some of those shadows. So obviously that whole bottom section is just encased in that that fire glow. So now I've got some old bone white in there. I did find that this was give me a bit of blue shift, so as you can see now I've added a bit of injury ochre to that white, just to help bring it a little bit closer to the orange that I was working with previously, just to combat that blue shift. So using this colour just to bring in those those embers, those the light flares coming off the fire, and obviously the haze from the edge of the lighting there. So just a transitional section, and it was it was a good mix to introduce some of those highlights with a softer touch to them, because scratching, a scratching technique in this area is probably not going to work too well. It's probably going to look a bit out of place, so I want the details a little bit softer, just again for that depth. So with this mid colour, this yellow that I've mixed up, I can always come back in with a white to really highlight it, and I can also come back with a red or a darker orange to help knock the yellow back again. So it's kind of like a mid-tone. See, now I've got pure white in the airbrush, and I'm just coming in and right in the centre of those areas that I've just used that yellow mix to really highlight and bring in some of those the flare spots, and just introduce some detail there in the backdrop, some rough leaves that were in the reference. So just starting to introduce some things here. And see, just coming back in with that yellow mix across the over the orange, so that's going to knock it back and create a nice yellowy glow. So, and all that red that I used around the teeth and in the shadowy areas, that's going to bring that back to a bit more of a yellowy feel. So again, back with the sepia. So I'm going back over some of the areas just to help darken them. Try not to go too dark, because like I said, this this with the firelight, it's kind of really sort of created a haze and pushed that image back a little bit further. So I don't want to bring any really sharp dark highlights in, because that's going to really sort of look out of place. So an over reduced mix is perfect at this point in time, because it's going to give me some very soft lines and almost a transparent transparent tone. It just helps eliminate some accidents and gives me a little bit of time to fix any mistakes if I kind of see them coming when I've got a reduced mix. So in the earlier videos I actually said that I'd kind of abandoned suit, because I wanted to move on to the severed heads just to, you know, work in a different area and, you know, move on a little bit. So now that I've got those heads sorted and I know what it looks like, I can come back in and work the bottom of his suit in. So you can see the chainmail's half done. To be honest, I got kind of sick of doing the chainmail, so I needed a decent break from doing it. So they're doing the severed heads. You know, that gave me a really decent break and helped me get, you know, a good frame of mind to come back in and do the chainmail. So coming in with you know, fresh ideas. See, I'm kind of using a cross-hatching technique for the bottom of the armour there, bottom of his suit, because it's like a leathery look. So it kind of has, you know, or the look of fibres or stitching, and in a cross-hatching type of style. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's all, you know, it's suggestive detail. This you just got to be careful not to overspray too much into the sepia colours and the orange that I've done, because the colour's going to react pretty bad. You know, they don't work too well together. So it's all, you've got to be very careful and always direct the spray away from those areas if possible. But that's where you know, learning some good control is ideal for this sort of thing, so you can, you know, you don't really have to mask anything off with a freehand shield or anything, but every now and then when you want to create a really sharp line, they're super handy and almost essential really, so especially working this small. So now at the moment I'm kind of working close to that edge, but when I really want to sharpen it up, I'll you know, I'll either erase or use a freehand stencil to, you know, drop the colour in and really harden that line up. As you can see there, I've you know, just scratching the edges just to see what it's going to look like, and, you know, quite happy with that. It really helps to bring those, you know, that image forwards, and to drop his suit a little bit further back into the image. Just you know, creates a huge amount of depth just from that one technique. You see, back to that cross-hatching style. I was quite conscious of the texture that I could see in the reference, and I really wanted to replicate that as much as I could, so this was an attempt to try and do that. It's all about keeping the airbrush moving, the trigger back and forth, keep the air on. And you only have to open the airbrush so slightly. You see what a huge difference that makes, just scratching some of those brightest highlights in. And so here's it's just a piece of cartridge paper cut out straight with a straight edge. And you see how effective that is. Yeah, it really brings that image forward, drops the background even further back. Even something as simple as, you know, scratching that those edges out there really helped. It's all little subtle things that really help to catch the eye. You just got to be aware of those sort of things. Here, I've still got a few more passes I will do over this bottom part, so you know, just want to slowly build up his suit. It's all about layering. So this adding this white, I thought would be a good idea to help, you know, sort of soften up these colours and help to wash it out a little bit, and it did actually work quite well. So quite happy with that. Just pushes the suit back of that a little bit further again. But again, just highlighting those brightest highlights. Looking at the reference, I noticed the colouring did lean towards the blue violet a bit, so I'll add some of the into the, you know, those sides of the heads that were catching the moonlight. Thought I'd add a little bit of blue violet to help the transition from the moonlight to the red violet, and then to the yellow to the orangey colour, and it did actually work quite well. But doing that, I then had to come back in with my white to bring in those highlights again, so it's a lot of back and forth, but it's definitely well worth it if you take the time to, you know, to bring those highlights back in. It really sets the piece off. I think highlighting is probably one of my favourite things to do, because I just love how it, just in an instant, it can actually change the whole picture. As you can see there, it's just, you know, it really just brought that forward there. Very minimal brush strokes. Just adding more texture in with that white again. And rather than scratch the hair in there, I thought I'd just freehand it with the white, because it's a little out of focus in the reference picture, so I don't want the image too sharp there. And I was quite happy with the outcome there. It looked quite cool. I think I said previously in one of the videos that I'd finally worked out a better way to do the chainmail, and that adding the white there was part of that process. It really helped soften up the chainmail, so it looked a little bit more effective. But more the bottom parts of the chainmail there I felt looked a lot better than the top and around the shoulders and that, because the technique was just so much better, and yeah, it didn't stand out too much. It was really nice and subtle. So just dropping those whites back into it helped soften up the links. So again, I've got a similar mix, the white with the injury ochre in the airbrush, just bringing in some of those highlights again. And now again, just bringing in the brightest of the highlights. I probably don't need to explain this because it's fairly obvious what I'm doing, but see that face really starting to take form now, with all the back and forth highlighting and then darkening it up. It's really taken on some good form there. Quite happy with that. Then just freehanding some hair in just for that soft effect. I'll generally pull a tight line on something, another surface somewhere else, just to make sure the airbrush is running really well before I attempt to do it on the project like that. Once I know the airbrush is running nice, I'm fairly confident in probably pulling about 3 or 4 lines before I might have to clean that out again, because the whites, most people would know, water-based paint, the white's the worst. There's a lot of tip dry on the white, so probably do 3 or 4 lines and then I'll clean it off again, and then good to go again. You're pretty safe to, you're not going to have a blowout or anything. Pretty much most of the colouring's done in that bottom corner now, so I'm really just going around making sure all my details are in and darkening up where I need to. Because I kept it on the lighter side of things, I've still got room to play with the contrast, so I can keep darkening this up a little bit more, just creating that depth, and like I'm doing here, bringing in those highlights again. So starting to come along now. Okay, so bit of tip dry there, trying to get the airbrush running right. This is part of the new process for the chainmail, and it ended up being really effective. Now I still scratch those links in, because that gives me something to follow with the white as well. It's almost like drawing in white when you scratch out the the detail. It gives you something to trace basically with the airbrush. And just some really bright highlights there from the embers of the flame. Back to the Payne's Grey, just to really darken the negative areas of those links up. So that helps to sharpen up the links, because obviously drawing them out in the white paint, they're quite soft, so this really helps to sharpen them up and bring those links forward. And my freehand paper shield there just to define that bottom edge of the belt. So now I'll give it a go painting it by hand. That turned out to be pretty effective. Working on some of those red violet areas that I noticed on the armour and in the face. They're just very subtle tones that I picked up. So it helps with that transition on the faces from the orange over to the blue. Works really well as a mid colour. Again, just adding in some of those softer details and trying to highlight some of the top edges of the chainmail with a nice soft colour. You see how easily that just sharpens the very edge up there and gives that depth. So just trying to highlight some of these edges of the belt. So I had an inkling that I'd get a little bit of blue shift, but I thought I'd give it a go anyway.